So welcome to the Horizon Summer School Shared Learning event, and thank you for coming today. Just as a brief background, the Horizon Summer School was developed as a proof of concept project based on the premise that education can be a key factor in the long-term support of survivors of trauma. Education, and we believe this very strongly, education can change people, empower them, and improve their future opportunities. Education can enable people to acquire new skills, gain employment, pursue further study, and rebuild their lives. Education can develop people's self-esteem and change the way they see themselves and they speak about themselves. And how they can contribute to their community. One of our students, when we first met, said, I want to be able to speak so the people will listen to me. And we took this as meaning much more than just improving her English language skills. In 2018, the Bakita Center secured funding from HSBC and Co-op to realize this project. And after a long delay due to the COVID pandemic, the summer school was delivered, successfully delivered, between June and July 2021. A great deal of work had been done before the actual delivery of the summer school to research, connect practitioners, supporting organization, university staff, and get them on board to understand the project. The challenges that we encountered, and there were a few, that we will be happy to share with other educational bodies interested in replicating this project. And today's event is to share the learnings from the delivery of this project by the people who were involved and took part in it. We are delighted and grateful that St. Mary's Vice Chancellor, Anthony Mclaren, is here to open the event. And our guest speakers, the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, Dame Sarah Thornton, Sir Tom Phillips, the previous director of the Center for the Study of Modern Slavery, and Nikki Anguilleri, head of widening participation at St. Mary's, are bringing their knowledge and insights to this event and sharing their thoughts on the role the future summer school can have in the long-term support for survivors of trauma. There are innumerable people who contributed to the success and successful delivery of the summer school, and it would take much more than 2 hours to thank them in an inadequate way. From St. Mary's staff, supporting agencies, external practitioners, our funders, referral organizations, volunteers, the Sisters of the Religious of the Assumption, we are grateful for their support and their willingness to resolve and overcome obstacles and offer solutions. Last, and definitely not least, we want to say thank you to the Horizon Summer School students for making this a worthwhile experience for all of us and for taking this journey with us. They will speak later of their experience. Following the presentations, there will be a question and answer session with the Horizon Summer School team, and we to answering your questions. I will now hand over to St. Mary's University's Vice Chancellor, Anthony Mclaren.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to begin by welcoming all of you to the Horizon Summer School Shared Learning event. We are delighted at St. Mary's University and humbled to be hosting this event and to be part of something which provides life-changing opportunities. The Horizon Summer School Learning Project, developed in 2018 and successfully piloted, as we've heard this year, provides a tailored and invaluable experience to the survivors of trauma, aiming to build students' confidence, skills, knowledge, and experience to improve their chances of accessing further opportunities to study or train, and their employability for the future. St Mary's has welcomed the Horizon Summer School students and for 6 weeks provided access to our facilities, our campus here at Strawberry Hill, and our nurturing learning environment. It's hoped that this pilot project will become a long-term commitment and some students from the summer school will be inspired to continue their studies at St Mary's given the opportunity. As a university, we try to ensure that our values reflect our ethos, and the summer school further demonstrates the firm commitment that St Mary's has to inclusivity and widening participation. We all know that more must be done to remove barriers to higher education, and the university's new Vision 2030, which will be launched this term, will set ambitious targets to ensure that St Mary's continues to play its part in this goal. Nikki Angeleri, our head of WP, Access and Participation, is speaking about this in more detail later in the programme. I'm delighted to confirm that all 9 students who were enrolled in the programme completed the course and achieved their certificate of completion. This is a fantastic achievement for those students and reflects the hard work that they put in. It also displays the commitment and the generosity of spirit of the staff at St Mary's, who work collaboratively to ensure the best possible experience for the participants. Before I hand over to Dame Sarah Thornton, it just remains for me to say thank you to all those involved in the project. A special thanks to Cindy Croucher-Wright, Head of Conferencing and Short Courses, who played a huge part in setting up the summer school. And many thanks to the Careers Department, especially Obi Aputa, who went above and beyond in providing the students with careers, advice and guidance. Thanks also to staff within St Mary's Security, Conferencing and IT departments, whose sympathetic and collaborative approach ensured participants had ID cards, temporary access to IT facilities. And finally, may I say many thanks to the fantastic teachers, practitioners and volunteers involved with the Horizon Summer School, many of whom volunteered their time to provide support and feedback to participants. And it's always a pleasure also for me as Vice-Chancellor to be able to thank Carol and all those in the Bakita Centre, of which we are so proud at this university. The St Mary's generosity of spirit, one of our key values, has ensured a successful delivery in this learning environment and sets an example of what can be achieved when we work together towards a common good. I look forward to watching the programme grow in the future, and now I have great honour to hand over to Dame Sarah Thornton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be supporting another event at St Mary's, but in particular supporting such a great initiative, and great that you're evaluating and learning lessons from it and sharing it with all of us, because it's absolutely vital that we do more of this work. I've spent a few mornings over the last 6 months working with some survivors with the Sophie Hayes Foundation, and it's really so encouraging to see the way in which with appropriate support and training and learning, the growth and the development and confidence of survivors was palpable. So great to be supporting an initiative which is similar at St Mary's. And Anthony, absolutely, wouldn't it be great if some of these survivors went on to study further at your university? As you say, a great indicator of just how inclusive you are. So in terms of what I thought I might say, it seems to me that this programme is absolutely complementary to the first priority in my strategic plan, which is about improving victim care and support. Of course, I'm concerned about identifying victims and referring them to support, but I've also been really focused on taking a long-term view and how do we ensure and help support people come from being victims to seeing themselves as survivors. How do we help them to live lives of sustainable independence? And over the last few years, I've been very much working in this area about how do we prepare victims. And so it seems to me that this work is essential. And it has struck me that we need to do much, much more because survivors do face significant barriers to sustainable independence, whether that's accessing education or accommodation or the right sort of mental health support or indeed paid work. And I've been focused on that. One of my frustrations, I've got to say, is that I do think, all the talk about nobody to do a million jobs in the UK at the moment, why couldn't we be more generous about allowing survivors and asylum seekers to work? I'd written to the Minister for Safeguarding, Victoria Atkins, over a year ago, suggesting that there could be an initiative, a pilot for survivors within the NRM to work. And her response at that time was to await on the broader Home Office review of asylum seekers' right to work. And we still don't know what that is. Maybe one of the good things that might come out of all these shortages is that there's a more benevolent view taken about asylum seekers and their right to work. But I do believe that this is utterly essential. So having tried to go at the issue head on with the Minister, I decided to work with the Rights Lab at Nottingham to commission some work looking at the benefits of work and also the disbenefits of not working for those in the NRM. And this research was done and we published it with the Rights Lab earlier in the year. The research found that access to the labour market is beneficial in general and in particular to vulnerable population groups, including survivors of slavery, but that actually transitioning from support into employment can be very, very challenging. And what the report came up with, accepting the fact that the legal barriers are a particular inhibitor and a significant inhibitor, actually the report recommended some very practical ways in which survivors who are within the national referral mechanism could be supported much more to assess their skills, think about what educational opportunities are available, and think about actually what could the curriculum be that would equip survivors for work. And this is something which I've raised subsequently with the Minister, saying, look, okay, if you don't want to move on the law, let's at least think about how we can equip people when they're in the NRM to take opportunities after they have finished that phase. How can we make sure that their employability has improved over that time? Because it seems to me that access to both education and work is a real part of a survivor's recovery journey. So with that in mind, anything that anybody does to equip survivors for sustainable independence is, to my mind, excellent. And I think that the St Mary's Horizon Summer School represents the very best of collaborative work across higher education, service providers and practitioners, in the way that you've created a programme for victims and survivors to build their skills and confidence and to empower them to engage further in education or work when that might be possible. Really encouraging to hear that despite the pandemic, you have 9 students and they engaged in all sorts of practical issues, ICT, digital literacy, but also importantly looked at employability skills. And so really welcome today's event as an opportunity to hear about how it all went, to reflect on the findings of this pilot, and really to say I hope that you are encouraged by the feedback, encouraged by the evaluation, and I would really encourage you to do this again next summer, and hopefully with 18 students on it rather than 9. So thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, and great to hear what you've done, and really would encourage you to do more. Thanks a lot. Handing back.
Thank you.
Vanna, do you want me to come in or you?
Yes, please. Yes, I was just trying to spotlight you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me today. And it's great to be back in touch with St Mary's and with others with whom I worked during my time there, especially perhaps Dame Sarah. I was really delighted when she got the job as the UK's independent anti-slavery commissioner, since I got to know her very well when I was Commandant of the Royal College of Defence Studies, where she'd been a member. And I felt immensely privileged when she invited me to be on her advisory panel when I was back at St Mary's. It's also a pleasure to meet Anthony Mclaren and to wish him all the best for his time at St Mary's, which is, as he said, a very special place. When I applied for the post of director of what was then the Centre for the Study of Modern Slavery, some people wondered why a non-academic ex-diplomat was interested in such a post. The reason was that during my various postings, and perhaps particularly in the Middle East and Africa, I'd seen some of the angles associated with the problems of modern slavery, such as the issue of forced labor in the Gulf and the link between conflict and international organized crime and human trafficking. It was, however, never a problem at the top of the Foreign Office's list of priorities, but the extent of human suffering I saw was daunting and very, very moving. What I hadn't really known about was about the extent of modern slavery in the UK and similar so-called developed countries, and the degree to which this was something of a buried issue in the political discourse of such countries. And one of the major pluses of working at St Mary's was meeting many of the individuals and organisations working to put a brighter spotlight on what was happening in our own backyard, as it were, and to support survivors. Indeed, what interested me about St Mary's and about the centre was the focus on research and activity, such as the master's course in human trafficking, migration and organised crime, designed to have an impact in the real world to change things for the better and not just to sit on academic shelves in some university library. It's not that I don't value academic work for its own sake, I certainly do, but sometimes it's important to try and change the world in a more immediate sense. In my starter period at St Mary's, I discovered that Carol and the very small team at the centre had put together some outline thoughts on what a summer school for survivors at St Mary's might look like, recognising that many survivors do not have the knowledge, skills and experience to complete the long journey back into something approaching normal life, and that this means that they remain vulnerable to being re-trafficked and sucked back into the dark world they've just left. This struck me immediately as a tremendous idea, so we worked up the outline into a more developed proposal and started to scratch our heads about how to raise the money for a proof of concept project, always the nitty-gritty. This led to approaches to the Co-op and the HSBC. The idea of the Co-op was something of a no-brainer, given their really excellent Bright Future programme. But I also had heard about the HSBC's work to make financial services, banking, more available to survivors. And so Carol and I had a trip to the city to make contact with them and were delighted by their interest and in due course their funding commitment. Indeed, as the shape of the project firmed up, I was also encouraged by our contacts with others active in the field, such as the Sophie Hayes Foundation, already been mentioned by Dame Sarah, City Hearts, Jericho and HERA. We were able to take account of the free thinking programme run by the Northern College in Barnsley, although nothing of the sort was then available in southern England. We were additionally given a major boost by the way our colleagues in other parts of St Mary's responded to the initiative, it having been a key part of our thinking that the university environment and access to, for instance, the careers services as well as other support services was part of the USP, which made St Mary's very much the right place to mount such a pilot. Once we had the funding in place, we set out to recruit a project officer, and Carol and I knew from the moment we met Wendy Adams that she was an excellent fit for the job, combining expertise, practicality, drive, and compassion. When Wendy moved on, I was similarly delighted to hear that Vanna had been chosen as her successor, bringing her own wealth of experience and expertise to the task, and successfully delivering the tough task of turning all the planning into actual delivery on the ground. I had hoped to stay at St Mary's to see this project through, but for a variety of reasons that did not prove possible. But it felt good to be moving on at a time when the future of the project seemed secure, and that was, of course, pre-COVID. I shall leave others to talk about the formidable challenges that must have represented, but I would like to add my own congratulations to all concerned on their success in bringing this project to fruition, particularly at such a difficult and demanding time. And I was delighted to hear that the June pilot had been such a success. Now, of course, comes the real crunch. What happens next? Hence, of course, the importance of today's event, the analysis of lessons learned, and a detailed look at the extent to which the model developed might be replicable in other higher education institutions. My ardent hope is that this June summer school will not prove to have been an interesting one-off, but that funding will be found to continue the initiative and ensure that the successful pilot will prove to have been the launchpad for similar initiatives in the UK and indeed internationally. That was always part of our long-term goal when we worked up this pilot project. And as I see it, it's an opportunity for the UK once more to show the way forward on the modern slavery issue. So my thanks and congratulations to all involved in the Horizon Summer School project, and my best wishes for the future of this project and for all the work of the Bakita Centre for Research on Slavery, Exploitation and Abuse. And maybe I should hand now directly over to Nikki to follow me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And it's wonderful to hear everybody else this afternoon. Thank you also for inviting me to come along and talk very quickly at your wonderful event this afternoon. So my role, as Anthony Mclaren has already said, is Head of Widening Participation at St Mary's. Some of you will be familiar with the concept of widening participation or widening access and participation. But here at St Mary's, it is not just a regulatory requirement. It's not just something that we do because our regulator requires us to do so, but widening participation is at the core of everything that we do. Widening participation looks to identify, address and eliminate any gaps in outcomes between different groups of students and any barriers to their success, particularly students from those groups which might be traditionally disadvantaged or underrepresented in higher education. And we look across the student life cycle in order to do this. We look at access, we look at how students might be introduced to the concept of further education and higher education whilst they're at school. And we look at not broadening their horizons or increasing their desire to study, but actually developing pathways through from where they are in schools to where they can be at the end of higher education. And so we're promoting higher education to them as a pathway to success. We also look at how we recruit from various different areas of the population and where traditional recruitment programmes may not work in the same sort of way. Once students are with us, we ensure that there are no barriers to their continuation. We try and work to eliminate all barriers to make them successfully arrive at St Mary's and work right the way through to leaving, and to ensure that they graduate with good honours degrees in the same way as any students without those barriers might do so. I'm head of a small team, but we work in what's called a distributed leadership model. Those of you who are familiar with this distributed leadership model know that we begin with a small group of the committed and the willing, including the inimitable Carol Murphy, of course. And we build from that a small army with the power and commitment to embed our ambitions into policy, into process and into culture. And I really believe that that is what we have done and are continuing to do whilst we are for students at St Mary's. The Horizons project joins a number of summer projects which we run from St Mary's. We have a schools outreach project for those pupils in year 10 and year 12 who may never have considered higher education as a possibility for them. We have the First Star Academy, who started with us in 2017 for students who are continuing within the care system. They began in 2017, and we are absolutely delighted to say that some of our original cohort from 2017 are now here at St Mary's. They enrolled last week and they're beginning their programme at St Mary's. And so we're really hoping that the Horizon Summer School might follow the same model. We also have Get Set for Success, which is a programme for students who have already expressed the desire to come to St Mary's, and they have a pre-induction residential programme with us in order to give them the confidence, the knowledge, the experience to really hit the ground running when they start on their programmes. Some other aspects of our work that may be of particular interest to you is our St Mary's Cares initiative. St Mary's Cares is an initiative for students who are care experienced, care leavers, or estranged from their families for one reason or another, including, of course, survivors of trauma, survivors of slavery, and asylum-seeking students. This St Mary's Cares initiative is sector leading and has been identified recently as an exemplar of good practice across the sector, because we provide for students financial, practical and material support while they're with us. So they're entitled to a bursary, but we also begin their studies with a welcome pack in Hall of Residence, so that they actually feel that they're coming to university with some of the home comforts that might not be provided for them by their families in the same way as for some other students. They have a named person at St Mary's who they can go for all of their aspects of support. And we also introduce them to employment on campus. So whether that's employment with our services or as student ambassadors, they have automatic entry onto these programmes should they require them. And we are at the point of signing. In fact, we're waiting for feedback from the Care Leavers Covenant in order to give us the rubber stamp for this piece of work that we already do. We're also in the process, which is slightly derailed by the pandemic, like lots of other things, but we're in the process of going through applying to become a sanctuary university, and that we're expecting through this academic year. And finally, we're really delighted to have just been awarded a substantial grant by the Office for Students for a mental health project promoting the mental health and well-being of students who are studying without the support of their families, or from families who are not necessarily experienced or knowledgeable within higher education. So that would be care leavers, that would be care experienced students, that would be estranged students, survivors of trauma, and students who are first in their family to study at higher education. And that project started now, hot off the press, beginning of October, and we will be really looking forward to the outcomes of that. We're supporting students at key transition points with specialist mental health support from one of our partner collaborators, which is Maudsley Learning in the South London and Maudsley Hospital. So we are hoping that Horizon Summer School might grow and develop and become another key contributor to the support that we can provide for students who are arriving at St Mary's in perhaps not quite traditional or typical fashion, but we welcome them, we support them, and we are committed to, as I said, identifying, addressing and eliminating any barriers for those students. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nikki. That was really interesting to hear. Fantastic work that St Mary's is doing. Our next speaker is Carol, if I can find her.
I'm here, Donna.
Oh, here you are. Okay.
Hi, thanks, Vanna. Okay, so I almost feel like there's not much left for me to say, but I'm going to say some stuff anyway. I want to go back, and listening to Tom was really interesting, because I want to even go back to before that. Tom talked about the kind of development of the concept. And I wanted to go back really to kind of emphasize how much the idea of the summer school emerged from a research project that I was lucky enough to be funded for by Trixie Brennickmeyer, to look at gaps in service provision across the UK. And as I went around in different parts of the UK and interviewed service providers, one of the things that kept coming up was there's a real gap in educational provision for people, especially people who are seeking asylum, but also, especially in the summer weeks when the FE colleges close down, that's a real kind of period where people are left with their own thoughts. And in fact, you know, when you do get the evaluation report, you will hear the voices of the survivors speaking about this. And I remember it was a few years ago in the summer, I was sitting on the bench at the back of the chapel, looking out onto the lawn with the running track on my right. And I thought, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be great to have a summer school for survivors here? And the two people I was having lunch with said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's do something about it. But it wasn't, you know, until Sir Tom came and we had a bit more space and a bit more capacity to develop that into this concept and to take that to the funders, which, thank you to the Co-op and HSBC, we received and recruited fantastic people to run this project, including Wendy and Vanna. I suppose that the kind of really important thing for me is that Wendy and Vanna really kind of cascaded down their care and their expertise into everybody who became involved in this project, including the volunteers, the tutors, and of course the survivors. And I think that really came across to me. And it was a real kind of special moment in the graduation ceremony when the survivors got up to speak to talk about how much it meant to them. In terms of going forward and taking something from this, of course, this is a shared learning event, and we will be publishing the evaluation report in more detail in a couple of weeks. But already there's been a lot of interest in this project. For example, Vanna has been invited to speak at a conference in Birkbeck. Mariam, I think, is on the call today, and Mariam is, one of the top people in the field around University of Sanctuary. And this conference will be a very important platform for us to talk about the summer school and the potential for other universities to take this model and work with it. Vanna has also been invited to write an article for a publication that has 25,000 readers across the UK. So we're really, really excited about that and hoping that that will come to fruition. As well as that, one of the gaps that we kind of often notice when we talk about provision for survivors is that British survivors are often not acknowledged. And we're aware that all of the participants in this summer school were non-UK nationals, were people who'd been trafficked in from overseas. But going forward, we really would like to think about how we can extend this programme out also to include British survivors. And that's one of the projects that I'm working on and have been funded by AHRC, is to look at gaps in service provision or their experiences of British survivors in the UK, as well as a major project with the University of Nottingham, looking at victims or survivors' journeys outside the NRM. I think that's really all I want to say for now about my kind of overview and my perspective. And really, I think it's time to hand over to the people who are at the forefront of developing, designing and delivering this project. So without further ado, I now hand over to Vanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. I'm going to talk briefly about what I think there are important areas of learning for this project. This was a pilot project. You need to remember that, and limited in scope and also in time. But it has provided a wealth of experience and information on how and what to do better for future summer schools. I thought I looked at three areas which I think would be useful also for other people to think of if they are interested in developing summer schools in their education institution. One is about a clear referral criteria and initial assessment, and this is to determine the skills of the skill levels of the student, such as communication in English and other areas of learning. But more importantly, is not to exclude any potential student and sort of decide who can fit or not into the program, but it's more for us on the other side to be able to put in place the right and supportive learning environment so that we can meet the need of every single student. I have to say that the areas I've decided to focus on, they were thought through and very careful by Wendy and all the people who were part of advising on the summer school. And it's not that nobody thought about them; they were there. But it is when you start to develop them on the practical side that you find how they can be refined and improved on. With regard to the clear referral criteria initial assessment, so there is this need of being able to meet everybody, every single student need. The Horizon Summer School decided to open the program to survivors both in and outside the NRM, the National Referral Mechanism, and also to survivors with status or non-state, non-state, still waiting for the immigration status to be defined. And this is again is important in terms of, we think this is a good way of approaching, of opening up this learning to people. But that, and this choice is going also to help with the design of summer schools, and also in adopting a flexible approach to what you're offering, courses and subjects on offer to the student, so that again you can meet all students' needs and make the experience relevant to everyone. From academic subjects to employability skills, we know a lot of survivors, for instance, won't be able to take up jobs for a very long time. So there need to be an offer of courses and subjects that can allow people to develop, in any case, the best they can. Risk assessment, again, within the referral initial assessment, again, to enable an adequate level of support. We spoke about this, and moving into a learning environment can cause a lot of anxiety and trigger insecurity and unwanted past memories. It can really undermine people's whatever little confidence they might have had, if they had any. And this means that a proper risk assessment will ensure that provisions are in place in terms of pastoral care or emotional support, and emotional support that the education institution might be able to meet up to a point. So there needs to be this conversation with the supporting organization in order to be able to, to support people. And also within this area, again, is the discussion with the candidates and getting an understanding of their understanding of what the aims of the summer school and what they are committing to when they sign up to the summer school, and managing their expectation. And what that means, for instance, we didn't offer a certificate that you can take to other places, or there wasn't an official piece of paper that you can have. But what is the experience is, why this experience is extremely important, is because it's an important access point to larger networks and future options. This is what is put in place, and for people. The second aspect of that I thought of might be interesting for people to sort of think of is a partnership approach. The Horizon Summer School benefited from the Bakita Center extensive network and partnership with specialist organizations supporting survivors. And this partnership, of course, meant that the summer school were able to target reach the right cohort of students. And this, for other people wanting to to sort of develop a summer school, there is this initial work to be done in terms of establishing relationships and networks to get the right student. And of course, the fact of having this network means that you can draw on this organization expertise for supporting developing training, for all the staff involved and all the people involved in the summer school, safeguarding guidelines, policies, and also directions. Steering group like we had was a brilliant group of people with enormous experience of the sector. And also, having this relationship meant that there were pathways to further support following the summer school, coaching, apprenticeship, emotional support, and other educational programs. And the third aspect that I wanted to sort of, that maybe people might want to think of, and also for future from school, we might want to think of if we're going to develop any future summer school, is the collaboration and involvement of university staff. This is embedding an externally funded project with the wider university established processes, program, and courses can present some challenge, let's say. So it is important to have this early discussion with senior staff and relevant department to explain aims and Wendy Adams did this enormous amount of work before the actual delivery of the summer school to put this in place. The fact that you have this conversation means, and the fact that you are involving and collaborating with the university staff is that you can rely on their flexibility and ingenuity. And I have to give some example here because, for instance, the Vice Chancellor before mentioned the fact that the Horizon Summer School was set up as a short course, and this was not a straightforward process, and it required personal commitment of the head of conference and short courses and support from security and IT to ensure that temporary students' accounts were set up. The anonymity of the student. Usually, if you enroll in a course, you have to give address, name. So the way of working so that we could still ensure anonymity by working with people who thought of ways of getting around this sort of thing. And we rely, you can rely very much on other university resources, HR. For instance, St. Mary's HR work towards setting up the Horizon Summer School as a new branch of St. Mary's University, a wider process of DBS checking. And again, it was necessary because again, to ensure the confidentiality and safeguarding of the HSS student. And then, I had to mention this because this was a last minute solution that we had to a problem, and we were all panicky about this. But for instance, the purchase of dongles and SIM cards data, very naively, we thought, you just go out and buy these things, I certainly thought that, you go out, buy dongles, you buy SIM card data, and then, the provider came back saying, no, but you need to set up a business account. And of course, we couldn't set up a business account, and St. Mary's couldn't set up a business account just like that either, because, there are different processes to follow. And, we were so lucky that someone, the head of section in purchases and procurement, purchases and payment, single-handedly resolved the problem by spending hours over the phone to the provider of these dongles and SIM card data, and we had to go and pay and avoid setting up a business account. These are all very important things, that came out of the experience and knowledge of somebody belonging to a bigger institution, a bigger project. And above all, you have access, by working with university, you have access to, in teaching from, the language, English language, creative writing, human nutrition, people who are able to skillfully devise and deliver workshops and sessions at short notice, and they know what they're aiming for. So it's a very important collaboration. And finally, a university is a fully equipped learning environment with the library, IT, and other facility from sport, recreational, and is a quiet and reflective. It can offer quiet and reflective areas for learning and reflection. So these are the three. There is so much more that needs to be, but I think these are three areas that are important to reflect on if people want to, if people are interested in developing this kind of a project, and also for us to refine them as we might move on to different future summer schools. So this is my this is me. And now I'd like to invite Wendy Adams to speak.
Hi there, thank you, Varna. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really lovely to be with you and to be connected with Horizon Summer School. And I remember the day I went for the interview for Project Officer at St Mary's. I actually got quite emotional in the interview, which isn't quite like me. And I myself at that time had gone through my own trauma, very different to the trauma of survivors, but I was a survivor of cancer treatment, and I can remember going for the interview at that time and listening to the vision of the summer school that Carol and the team had put together. And I connected very much to that vision, partly because I've worked for many years with people who are survivors of human trafficking and modern slavery, but also knowing the challenge of trying to reconnect to the wider community, to opportunity again, and to working life again. So I really had a synergy with the vision to connect survivors to education, but also to a community. And what struck me at St Mary's, that it's an educational environment, but it has a real sense of community. And the strap line we chose for Horizon Summer School is learn, connect, and grow. And that was the vision, that we wanted to provide an educational environment that was welcoming, where people would have the confidence to learn something new, but also to connect to a new community as well, and maybe reconnect to themselves and what they may dream of in the future, and grow in confidence and grow in a sense of hope for the future as well. And so that was the vision. And so it was a real privilege to take up the role of project officer back in October 2019. And obviously we didn't foresee all the challenges that were ahead. And but I think all the challenges, all the blood, sweat and tears have been worth it for those 9 students that have graduated from Horizon Summer School. And I would hope for those 9 students, it's something that they will look back and look back at it as such a positive experience in their journey of recovery. And I just want to say that during my time developing the Horizon Summer School concept and programme and working with the partners that have made that possible, it was an absolute pleasure working alongside Sir Tom Phillips and Carol Murphy and Catherine Hodges and Anta Bracco as well, and then also with Varna to hand over the project to her. And I very much valued their insight, their passion, their compassion, and also for their support when it looked like the pandemic was going to delay the launch of Horizon Summer School. And we had many a meeting where we thought of plan A, plan B, plan C. I think there was possibly even a plan D in terms of depending on what they had said at number 10 that day. So it was nail-biting stuff as to thinking, okay, how are we going to make this happen in the midst of a pandemic? And a huge thank you goes to HSBC and the Co-op for their funding and their resourcing, but also for their support and commitment to make sure that we could still make it happen financially, even if it was postponed to the following year. I want to say, when I went through the research process, the first stage of developing the programme, I looked at many other organisations to be generous with their learning, and with their resources, with their wisdom. And what I found was that those stakeholders, those organisations were really generous, and there was such a collaboration that I encountered. When sometimes what can happen, people can be protective, territorial about their learning, but actually there was a generosity of spirit amongst those organisations to share their learning, such as Northern College. Jane Williamson, who's on the call today, she just gave me everything that she had, and because she wants other survivors to benefit from what they had learned at Northern College, and HERA as well. It was just spectacular going along to their course and seeing how their students are benefiting from what HERA are doing, but also how they wanted to partner with us as well and work alongside us as well. And the Sophie Hayes Foundation as well, there was that generosity of spirit to work together rather than work in competition with each other. And the generosity of St Mary's staff, as we've already heard, being willing to host, teach, input, do the administration, room bookings, which is more complicated than it sounds. All of those things was fantastic. And all the steering group members that we got on board, and it's through the work of Carol and Tom as well, had already developed those relationships, but also been able to meet for coffee with people and talk about the concept, but then meet together as steering group members and glean from their insight, wisdom and experience and honesty. And Karen Anstis from Paquita House, she's so honest and so direct, but you need those sort of people on board, which helps steer the course in the right direction in terms of the content of the programme, how long it should be, safeguarding considerations, even the name of the project as well. So they were really valued along the way. So big tip is get the right people on board if you're going to do this, and work in partnership and work with people who have that generosity of spirit towards it. I will finish soon because I'm aware of the time, but that input was absolutely vital to get to that stage of development. And maybe in the Q&A we can cover kind of in more detail what those stages were. Although it was hugely disappointing that we had to postpone the delivery of Horizon Summer School, I think the positive was there was more time to think about some details that maybe we wouldn't have thought of. And you can feel the challenge as Varna speaks of how much detail is involved to make something like this happen. And I certainly knew I was handing the project over to Varna into safe hands, and who has a mind for detail and to think of things that maybe I hadn't thought of. So thank you, Varna. And Horizon Summer School was a concept, but then it hit the ground and it became a reality, and that reality is people and the students that actually came along to the course, and they're individual people, individual students, and it became about their experiences, their learning, their achievements, and the sense of community that they were able to build with each other as part of that community. And I'm sure Melanie, who I'm going to hand over to in a moment, who was her role as course navigator, was to help that sense of community as well build during the course. So it's been great to hear how well it went. I'm sure there's lots of learning that has been drawn from this pilot course, and to hear from that student voice of how they found it, and all the challenges that have been faced. I'm sure it has been worth it. And just as it's already been said, it would be fantastic that funding could be secured. It would be fantastic that other educational environments take this concept and develop it for themselves, because this can be a valuable tool in helping survivors access a sense of the future, hope, and rebuild confidence in their lives. It's not a magic wand at all, but it's a tool that can help on that journey. And I just echo what Dame Sarah Thornton said about survivors and asylum seekers having the right to work. And in my job now with Justice and Care as a victim navigator with Essex Police, many of the people that I'm supporting, it's that frustration of not being able to get on with life because the system doesn't enable that to happen. And so I echo those thoughts as well. And but I will shut up now and just want to say thank you for having me. And it's just wonderful that Horizon Summer School happened in the end, even when a pandemic came along and tried to derail it. So thank you. Well done. That's what I'm going to say. Well done.
No, thank you, Wendy. I mean, without all the stuff that you put in place before, I don't know if, I would have managed to go anywhere, to be honest. There is, can I just, I leave it to Melanie and Tori to, would it be possible for Tori to speak ahead of you, Melanie? Because we're running out of time. So maybe, yeah, would you mind?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so Tori, maybe we'll give the platform.
Super short then, so that I don't let
Hello.
Hi everyone. So I'm Tori, and I taught the English language component on the Horizon Summer School programme. I can see a couple of the students are here as well, so it's really nice to see their faces again. I think there's Anita I can see, and Claudetta. There they are too. Okay. Yeah, it was really, really lovely. We had a lot of fun, I hope. So despite the challenges of the pandemic, I think there were quite a few things that translated quite well online. So we were able to have some quite good discussions and learn quite a lot from each other. And I think it gave a space where people could just let their personalities come through. So we learned quite a lot about things like food from other countries and so I see Anita smiling there as well. And I think it really enabled their confidence to be boosted by the fact that because it was online, I think things like pronunciation worked a little bit better and more fun because people didn't feel quite so shy maybe speaking in a room full of people, so they were able to kind of really join in. And also with writing, so these were things we were able to set for homework, and we had quite a lot of interesting stuff coming through with writing and so on and so forth. So the only things I would change maybe just beforehand, if there's going to be an online element, maybe having a training course just to get everyone up to speed, because there were some other features we would have liked to have used, like the chat and so on and so forth, that I think would have been able to be utilised a bit better if students were a little bit more prepared in that aspect. But that's the only thing that I would change, that I just really, really enjoyed the experience. So it's been a long time since I taught pure English language, so it was quite fun for me to kind of get back into that as well. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say, unless anyone wanted to ask any questions. But it was really, really nice, and I think it's a wonderful programme, and I hope it gets the opportunity to continue, and I hope that the students enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you having me on board to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you so much. And now to Melanie.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, nice to see you, Tori, as well. I just wanted to quickly express my thanks again to Wendy and Carol and Anta for having me come on board. I want to say that I loved the experience, and I feel like I gained as much from it as I hope the students gained as well. So Wendy got me on board as the course navigator for the summer school program. But as well as that, I was asked to deliver the cultural navigation and life skills sessions. And I had 4 one-hour lessons to deliver subjects which are rather deep and wide. But I feel I was able to benefit from being the course navigator, which was a role that allowed me to be present with the students and get to know them and be with them every day. And this enabled me to get a better idea as the weeks went by of who the students were, and what they maybe needed and where their struggles were. So I think that helped me a lot in delivering the lessons I did. I taught initially, my first lesson was an introduction to culture. what it is, where it comes from, why we have it, and how it contributes to shaping the behavior of society. And this came from thinking, wanting to equip the students with greater cultural awareness overall, which I envisioned, and from other reading, I felt that, and from my own personal experience, helps to ease some of the anxiety about the differences perceived in day-to-day life with regards to the actions and behaviors of people you see around you in a culture that's not familiar. And secondly, my second lesson was on cultural change. And this was, teaching that change was always happening in culture. It can happen over a short time and a long time. And COVID is an example of a short cultural change, perhaps traumatic, but as well as other aspects of British culture, particularly conversational etiquette. My third lesson was specifically on communication skills. I used video examples, which was one aspect, to teach body language and nonverbal communication. And then lastly, I delivered a rather kind of unique lesson, which didn't seem to fit, but on navigating life's challenges. And I taught some practical tools on how to think about and perceive your challenges, and how to, particular tool on how to devise determining what's within your control and what's not in your control, and then how to use SMART goals to begin planning a way forward in those challenges. So a rather broad range of topics, and they kind of evolved as the weeks went by, and I spent more time with the students and participated in classes with them. And one lesson I learned, which I'll share with you by way of a little story, is how empowering it is to learn the why of things. In my first lesson on culture, I was really surprised by the reaction of some of the students to an unexpected component. And I used a practical example of an everyday British cultural behavior to illustrate that any cultural practice or behavior has deeper unseen meaning, and that the behavior is valued and maintained because of the meaning underneath. And the example was one the students encounter every day of their lives, namely the queue. In unpacking dimensions of where this practice comes from that they would have seen and experienced everywhere, and how it represents particular values in British society, which have developed over time and come about through experiences in society. A number of them were utterly delighted to learn about the queue. And I'm not over exaggerating when I say the word delighted. So this really threw me. They were thrilled to learn and understand this peculiar behavior, which they had adopted themselves, but which they had no understanding of, which now made complete sense to them. And they wanted more. They were so eager to know and understand more about where they were. And that just taught me how empowering it is to learn the why of things, and demisting the confusion around behavior can be really enlightening. My subsequent lessons on cultural change and aspects of British culture taught how that we as social creatures, we adapt to culture. Culture is fluid. And this was intended to contribute not only to teaching the students about British culture and being in a new culture, but also to possibly ease some anxiety related to identity in the new culture. That there are aspects of culture that you can let go of, and other aspects you can adopt depending on what's needed in your circumstance. And that culture doesn't need to be feared, and it's possible to adapt and not lose our identity, and not lose what we value. And overall, I would say from these lessons and as course navigator, I saw that I saw within the students and the feedback I got that having alternative ways of thinking and perceiving current circumstances could actually help to transcend those very things. Because we can all get stuck in the ways we think and perceive, particularly in challenging times. And this cohort has exceedingly challenging circumstances. So I'll just end by saying that I came to see that what could be helpful for this cohort of learners might not necessarily be purely academic and practical skills, that being understood and encouraged and being in an environment where they can be curious and explore that, and one that fosters belonging and acceptance, is ultimately incredibly valuable. So I will end it there. I hope we're back on time. I'm not sure. Thanks, Van.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you. I'm going to introduce now Alison Scowen, who is one of our funders, is the Senior Public Affairs Manager at Co-op.
Thanks, Lana. Lovely to see you all. I would love to be in the room with you all, but maybe that's for next year. So Co-op was absolutely delighted to co-sponsor the summer school, and I know HSBC absolutely feel the same. I think it's wonderful to hear about the enormous success of the project and just the resilience of the team behind it, who delivered it in the summer of 2021, despite the challenges posed by the pandemic. Can't quite believe, after all the trials and tribulations we've had, that we're here today reflecting on the delivery of the programme. So I just want to say a huge well done to everyone involved. I suspect, in common with everybody on the call here today, I share the view that there's a moral responsibility to take action on modern slavery, both on a personal level, but as representatives of the organisations we all work for. We must never forget that modern slavery is about the exploitation and degradation of individuals, and it's essential that we take action to prevent it happening in the first place, as we do at the Co-op, and encourage other businesses to do. But we must also recognise that it's the fact that it is happening, and therefore do what we can to support the victims. I think getting involved in and supporting the Horizon Summer School has been one of the ways in which the Co-op has been able to meet our responsibility and to play our part in supporting fellow human beings to rebuild their lives after being in slavery is possibly one of the most powerful things that any business could do. And it seems like a really long time ago that myself and Paul Gerard, who I work with at the Co-op, first talked to Tom about the possibility of supporting the project. It might be back in 2018, and that feels like a really long time ago. I can't remember, but I know it was a long time ago. And at that time, the Co-op itself was starting out on our own project, which Dame Sarah mentioned earlier on, Bright Future, which provides employment opportunities for survivors through a partnership with City Hearts, who are indeed another partner in Horizons. And the way in which Tom and Carol described their vision for the project struck a real chord with us at the Co-op, as we already knew that working with survivors, there was a real need for better support and offerings to build confidence and skills, sometimes as a precursor to employment opportunities, but always as part of the journey to sustainable freedom. And Tom, Wendy, Carol and Varna were always very clear to us that the summer school, and as it later became known, the Horizon Summer School, was intended to be a proof of concept in the first year. And I think that's what really appealed to us as a sponsor, to be able to support something that would not be a one-off at a single moment in time, but could be used to encourage and persuade others, sponsors and higher education institutions, to get on board and play their part. And I know hopefully we'll get onto the what next question today, But I hope the answer to that is going to be more opportunities for more survivors in more locations, not just at St Mary's, but trying to get other institutions to really kind of catch the idea and take it on and develop it as their own. What I particularly like about the approach taken, and I think this was the speaker before just picked up on it, was the creative blend of sessions and opportunities put together, recognising that recovery and the path to sustainable freedom really requires confidence building, practical skills and emotional support, and just a bit of pragmatism from the team of teachers and leaders to do what's needed. And I think the partnership approach, bringing multiple partners to bring what they could offer to the programme, was an absolute delight to see, and very much to the co-op way of thinking. And I think the coming together of everybody, united by a common goal, has been key to the success of this project. And I hope that the experiences and the learning that we've gathered will act as a catalyst for the future evolution of the project in summer 2022 and beyond. So so a delighted sponsor. I think that's what you always want with these things. So congratulations, everybody. Excellent work. Couldn't be more pleased.
Good afternoon. I'm one of the Horizon Summer School students. I'm going to speak on behalf of my fellow students. We met on 22nd September to reflect on our experience of the summer school. Our discussion focused on three main points: what we learned about ourselves, what we learned from the subjects we were taught at summer school, what can be done differently for future summer schools. From this experience, we have learned that it is important to be open to new learnings, to be ourselves, to be positive, express ourselves so that we can communicate and be open-minded. Some of us came to the summer school with the idea that we only wanted to do certain subjects, and we couldn't see the need for attending all the classes. We couldn't see what benefits would be in attending them, or thought we knew enough of a certain subject. We discussed why we thought in that way, and some ideas that came up were that perhaps we were set in our ways and lacked confidence in ourselves to face something new. We didn't want to disappoint ourselves by failing. During the 6 weeks of summer school, we have changed our minds and recognized that there is always something new to learn, that nobody is perfect, and being surrounded by people who are positive gives you the power to think positively, face challenges, and encourages you to move forward. We no longer think that we cannot do things, and we want to give ourselves the opportunity to try out without fear. One of us, who in the past was afraid of sitting in front of a computer and worried about being asked to do something, has recently been singled out by the teacher at another course she is attending to demonstrate to her fellow students the correct process to log in and set up online accounts. We have learned not to exclude possibilities because of a set way of thinking, or because it requires effort or lack of confidence, or worries about not being able to finish. We have learned to persevere. All the subjects were interesting, and we enjoyed them and learned something new from all of them. Our English language skills and IT skills have improved. We have learned to sew and about nutrition and healthy eating, how to write poetry and write better CVs, and learn techniques that will help us in our job search in the UK, how to budget and save money. However, in our discussion, we agreed that we have learned additional skills that are not strictly to do with the specific academic subjects. We think that because of the summer school, Our communication skills have improved by interacting with different people and different cultures, sharing different kind of food and learning from others, respecting others, and not overreacting because we don't understand cultural differences. Our confidence has improved by sharing ideas with others and being confident of speaking in another language in front of people without fear of making mistakes. We have learned about teamwork and to change our routine and mood because you need to be ready and meet the team when the class starts. The summer school has given structure to our week and helped our mood by knowing that 3 days a week were planned. There was a purpose for getting out of bed and the house. We have learned about time management through the cooking classes. They have helped us understand the idea of planning ahead, prioritizing, choosing, and organizing. We have all been surprised that you can achieve so much in less than an hour. From the IT sessions, employability skills, and life skills sessions, we have learned about working with professionals coming from different perspectives, networking, doing research, and about London culture. The creative writing workshops have contributed to improve our writing skills, but also the confidence to share emotions and personal thoughts, knowing that there will be no negative judgment. The drama session was a great physical and emotional session that has helped us come together as a group and feel confident with each other. We have learned about problem solving and to ask for help when needed. We discussed future summer schools, and we think that there should be more drama and physical sessions, dance movement therapy, and singing. These can release stress, tension, and help people get closer to each other. We think face-to-face is a better model of delivery, especially when people have not had formal studying before, or it happened in the past, or English language skills are limited. It is much easier to ask questions in person than online when you cannot find the right words. There was a wide age range in our group, and face-to-face sessions would have been helpful. Creative writing and English lesson complemented each other, and we believe that more time should be dedicated to pronunciation, spelling, and conversation. In our discussion, we agreed that group work is important and beneficial, and more time should be allocated to that. The practical classes, such as fashion upcycling and human nutrition, were also important, in our view, because they were an opportunity for socializing, sharing ideas, and finding out more about the other students. They were calming and relaxing. We discussed if the summer school could be delivered 1 day per week, especially if the university was far from where students live. We agreed that this wouldn't be a good choice. Students would forget what they had done from 1 week to the next. In our view, 3 days per week is a good schedule, and the challenge of traveling can be overcome by delivering 1 or 2 days online if necessary. The summer school should last more than 6 weeks. Another 2 additional weeks would have made an even greater difference. As mentioned before, more physical activities should be added, more drama sessions and creative activities, and when possible, consults with future students for practical sessions. They may have skills such as knitting or beading that they may want to bring to the group and develop. It would also be good to give away as gifts products made in practical sessions or sell them to raise money to support other people in need. This is a summary of our discussion, and we all agree that the summer school has been a positive and enriching experience that we would recommend to other students, and we hope that there will be more in the future. As a personal note, I would like to add that I have loved the summer school, not just because it gave me something to do and structured my week, and has made me part of another reality, but also because of the people who were chosen to deliver the summer school. It is because of the people that I committed and found the experience unforgettable. It would have not been the same, it would have not made the same impact on me if someone else was doing it.
I think we might move on, and we might want to hear from Rebecca. Are you there, Rebecca?
Yes, I am. And
Hi.
what a tough act that is to follow, Anita. That was absolutely outstanding. I've been working with Anita for just over a year now through Hestia, and I can just see what an enormous achievement this is to speak in front of this many people with such an eloquent and concise tone. You've done an amazing job there, Anita. You should be so proud of yourself. So yeah, this is a bit of a tough act to follow. But yeah, I've been sort of invited to speak on behalf of Hestia. So Hestia are a large support provider in London. We currently have about 1,700 service users. And we were very lucky to have 6 of our service users attend the summer school. So I didn't have the opportunity, unfortunately, to be part of the formulation and the development of the school. That was a couple of my colleagues, but I did come in at the point of referral. And I can tell you it was very, very popular. We had a bit of a tricky time trying to whittle it down to 6. I think the original number was 2 or 3, and we were able to push that up to 6. But it was enormously popular. And I think that's from the sort of uniqueness and the bespoke quality of this course that made it so popular and something that people were really keen to attend. And personally, from my perspective, coming on the first day, the launch day, and walking onto the campus, I was really overwhelmed by the beauty, or the physical beauty of the space, as well as the tutors and the staff members supporting. I actually walked out there thinking, gosh, I really wish I could do something like this. But it was absolutely amazing to see the time and effort that had gone into developing this course. And in terms of the students from Hestia, I think sort of they all came to it with a variety of wishes and expectations and sort of what they wanted out of the course. So some, came at it from a perspective of wanting to learn from an educational standpoint. Some others wanted to build community, coming out of an enormous amount of time in isolation. Being able to study face-to-face with a group of people was a really attractive prospect. I know some of the students had attempted some remote study, so they'd attempted some ESOL classes, maths, etc. online, and really struggled to fully engage with it and fully feel like it had an impact on their life. So for this course to be able to go ahead from that dual perspective of face-to-face and online was such an enormous positive, I think, overall. And some of the students came to it from a perspective of simply just wanting to enjoy something, learn a new skill, build on existing skills. And that really is a positive distraction from the constant reminder in their usual day-to-day lives of the trauma and on the emotional recovery journey that they're on. So whilst therapeutic courses and counselling in their day-to-day lives support with the outlet of the trauma, really the way that you can recover in the way that you feel a sense of joy is being surrounded by other students and the staff members in laughter, in positive encouragement, and really gaining a sense of achievement and personal developing within that. So I genuinely can see the seismic change in the students that Hestia referred onto the course, who they are as people. They've grown in confidence, they've grown in understanding what they can contribute to the world and to society, interacting with others, being able to express their wishes and desires to others, going on into different courses and really identifying with what their goals are with the specific education courses they're on, and going on to employment programs such as Sophie Hayes. I genuinely think, as Anita very, very well said, that the people were a big factor to the successes. I think the small touches in this course were so important. They meant an awful lot to the students. So, for example, the travel reimbursement, the internet, the data, and the laptops being provided with some lunch, all of these aspects really allow the students to engage in the course as fully as possible. I think as well, you know, it's another thing to consider is how the students, yes, they've developed confidence, they've developed a sense of what they'd like to do next, so going on to these other education programs. But really one of the core values and learned behaviours that they're taking away is to know that there is more to learn. We're all sort of unfinished projects in a way, and we will have setbacks in life, and there is a worry that if you put yourself out there, you're risking, you know, potential downfall. But a course like Horizon has helped them to build a resilience to face those challenges and to face those potential setbacks, knowing that it won't lead to an absolute downfall. They'll learn upon those skills and be resilient enough to go into their futures with confidence and bravery. So lastly, sort of what I would recommend and really like to see is, of course, this being repeated again, bigger and better, and also a nod to the fact that this was female only, whereas we have a large amount of male survivors of modern slavery in London that do not have access to some things such as this. And it's very important to be inclusive, maybe a mixed class or male only class as well. Similarly with British only survivors, and that's a really important point to consider. So yeah, very finally, I'd like to say that I was really delighted to be there at the launch day and at the graduation and see an enormous difference in all the students from start to finish. So thank you so much, Varna, and other contributors. It's been a real pleasure to see.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Very nice to see you here. And now, Diana, one of our volunteers.
Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank Carol, Varna, and everyone that made this possible. The program, as you can tell, has made a huge impact to everyone. I was able to witness actually the evolution, if you will, of the ladies from being shy and to eventually come out and being outspoken and confident. For myself, it has actually inspired me to pursue a career in supporting people and also creating a positive change. I want to just quickly go back to the evolution that I saw. I almost couldn't believe what I was experiencing or seeing. I always imagined that in order to help and support people, it would take some time, but with the group that we were in, it was so quickly to get comfortable and open up and develop into amazing people. Anita, honestly, so proud of you, of all you ladies. I know many are away because they have other programs that they have to attend, but I feel so overwhelmed in how much these guys have grown, I guess, in how much these guys have accomplished things, and listening to your dreams, to the hopes, to the motivation that you guys left the program with. It's honestly so amazing, and it feels so great to have been part of all of this experience from you. And yeah, again, seeing you all being comfortable to speak in. I remember last time that we met, Anita, you were like, I don't want to speak in front of no one. I'm now seeing you so confidently talking. I'm not even shaking or flinching. Yeah, honestly, I'm so proud. And again, Varna, Carol, thank you so much for including me in this experience and allowing me to take part even in talking and allowing me to say how I felt about all of this. I really wish you all the best, and hope that you guys continue making programs like these, because this is what makes the change. This is what many people need. So yeah, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. It was lovely to work with you. It was really nice. And to have you as one of our, what was it, work placement people, our only first work placement person in the Horizon Summer School. It was lovely. I think we can go straight to Sabiola. Sabiola is the evaluator, the person who did the evaluation of our program, and she will present the findings from what she's, from her work.
Thank you, Vanna. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm aware of the time, so I might speed up a little bit the presentation. I will share the screen now, so you can all see. First of all, I want to thank all the participants who gave their insights about the Horizon Summer School, and it was great to work with all the students. It was my pleasure. I will skip the first slides because I'm aware of the time, as I said, but I want to emphasize the importance of education as support for survivors' recovery and reintegration, because education is a human right, and it should be treated as such. So even literature highlights that education can be used to support trauma recovery, development of life skills, it develop confidence, and it improve mental health. So consequently, it can serve as a support toward long-term supports for survivors. So, okay, I'm gonna skip this slide because we now are familiar with Horizon Summer School. In the data collection, I just want to mention that this has been a formative and a summative evaluation research, which means that it has assessed the process delivery and the impact of a program at survivors. The research has been a flexible design, has utilized a flexible design and used qualitative methods of data collection just to gain meaningful information from experiences of participants. And as well, it included students of the Horizon Summer School, staff members, and teachers as well. In detail, 16 semi-structured interviews are being conducted with students, with staff members, and with teachers, respectively 9 interviews with students, 3 online interviews with staff, and 3 online interviews with teachers. As well, baseline questionnaires are filled at the beginning of the program, and moreover, participant observation has been conducted and has served as a supplementary method of information gathered. As well, secondary data have been considered as volunteer notes. So I will concentrate more on the research findings. First of all, I would like to share an overview of the participant profile, because it shows a lot about the summer school. The age groups and the nationalities were very diverse, as we can see from the charts. And this shows that the program was very flexible, and it has been provided for survivors from different age groups, cultural backgrounds, and educational backgrounds as well. As well, these charts regarding the needs for development and their expectations, which students shared in the baseline questionnaires, shows that there is the need to develop these needs. So these needs reveal the necessity for programs such as the Horizon Summer School to support survivors further. I will now concentrate on the Horizon Summer School process evaluation, which has shown that this program has served as an initiative in offering education dedicated to the needs of survivors who have been in different stages of their recovery and reintegration in the UK. It has been a feasible model delivered as a short course, and it has been a flexible program which provided blended knowledge like academic knowledge, life skills, and provided personal well-being information. As well, it has been a trauma-informed approach by set up in a safe environment as the St. Mary's University. So this is an overview of the key characteristics assessed about the Horizon Summer School, but I will go a bit deeper in each of them. So I'm skipping this slide to go on the more deeper in characteristics, which have been the Horizon Summer School has been a new survivor-tailored approach, offered blended teaching and curricula, as I mentioned. And this statement, this quote from one survivor shows very well that they have found the methodology very useful because they know that with the evolving of technology, they have to participate online in many meetings or further educations. It has been sorry about that. Okay, it has been a trauma-informed approach. It was noted that staff tutors had an excellent awareness in working with traumas, and the relationship created between them and the survivors had vital elements of trust and emotional support. This is very important, as highlighted, for example, from the survivors' care standards. Working in a trauma-informed way is important when providing care, and this has been noted with a Horizon Summer School program. As well, it has been a safe environment, resulting as essential to survivors' mental health, which enabled them to concentrate better, open up, and socialize. It would have been great for me to read the quotes from students with you, to you, but I'm afraid I don't have time, so maybe we can share the presentation and you can read after this session today. The importance of university setting, that this has been mentioned, and it has been one of the main findings of the evaluation. It had a positive impact on survivors' self-concept and self-esteem, because they felt proud of being in a university, using the facilities, having the student ID with them. It has been a great impact to their emotional health, and so it made them feel proud of themselves. As well, university resources in terms of delivering the program has been added value to the Horizon Summer School, because the university offered already in place resources like studying spaces, for example, or staff expertise. It has been an individual tailored support, because although it has been offered to a group of survivors, of students, individual learning plans have been developed in meeting with a course navigator in order to ensure students' progress based on their specific needs. As well, support has been provided during all their learning process from volunteers involved within the program. It has been a reflective process, which has been very positive, and has had a very good impact on students, because it involves the reflective practice with students and volunteers every end of the day to assess their learning process and their feelings as well. The reflective process impacted survivors to gain confidence and gave them the feeling of being heard. And as well, the illusion of time, as explained in the trauma-informed code of conduct, it was evident, because this has made students feel understood and understand that the staff was there for them without perceiving the potential pressure of time outside their relationship. I have to mention that COVID-19 has had impacts on delivering the program, where the main impact has been in staff change of delivery time, adapting new methodology and curricula, adapting all these changes while sticking to the original budget, which covered inability to provide the program, for example, for women with childcare needs, as well as some accommodation issues for students who needed to travel from outside London. Very important for me is to share some findings regarding the Horizon Summer School impact on survivors, and I can say that it has had a significantly impact on survivors' mental health. It developed transferable life skills and expanded opportunities for a better future. I'm happy to say that one of the main findings has been that it has improved mental health, has developed positive thinking, raised awareness on self-help strategies, breaking down isolation, emotional and physical one, building emotional resilience, and triggered the feeling of hope for the future, which is very important in every one of us. I want to read this quote actually because it says a lot. Says that one of survivors says that even though I have these problems in my life, this program showed me that I need to have hope and be strong in this life because I have a choice. I think this is what the summer school showed me, that they have made me stronger. This is what I think. I cannot believe that in 2 months that I don't know, I have hope today. I hope to learn, to be someone. I hope one day I will be me and a stronger person. So it's amazing hearing these statements. I will go on saying that the impact in survivors has been in gaining experience and enhancing self-efficacy beliefs, which basically are feeling about being able to do something with confidence, which develop with experience. And the Horizon Summer School has been a positive experience which has developed confidence in them. It has been a great opportunity to socialize and create a sense of belonging. Sense of belonging is very important, especially in people who have been displaced from their home country. So the community, the group in Horizon Summer School has given them the opportunity to meet people, to share, to understand that they're not alone and to belong somewhere. So they created this sense of belonging, which is key in their mental health. Very important is that the Horizon Summer School equipped survivors with skills, which have been academic and career skills like English, communication, writing, critical thinking, computer and studying skills, which they will need for further programs, educational programs, as well everyday practical life skills, like adapting to a new culture, healthy eating, sewing, and upcycling, as well as budgeting. So these everyday life skills being blended with academic and studying skills will be very helpful for everyday lives of survivors and supporting them in their recovery and reintegration journeys. It has been as well a path toward future and further education, because it has encouraged initiative and aspiration for further education, and it has raised awareness on the importance of education in personal development and empowerment. As well, it has created a route toward future employment, although we have mentioned that many of them do not have the right to work in the UK for the moment, but they have shared that this program have equipped them with transferable life skills and employability skills, so they can be ready for the next phase when they are ready to get employed. They have shared with me some challenges they have experienced during the summer school and some suggestions. I was very pleased to hear some of them from Anita. So some of the challenges were traveling from long distances, difficulty concentrating for a long time online, issue with internet, although they had dongles, they experienced some connectivity problems, personal issues such as mental health and related issues, as well accommodation and stability that disrupted their studies. As well, some of their suggestions had, I'll go back. Okay, some of their suggestions have been that they needed more time to familiarize with computers and learning platforms at the beginning of the program, extended English classes for them to maximize their ability to speak and learn in a second language, preferably more face-to-face sessions on campus, a longer program, extended longer program more than 6 weeks, more dedicated well-being sessions, and include more arts and creative classes during the summer school. So based on the findings and the conclusions of evaluation research, these are some recommendations that the research would like to share with you, like development of educational programs to support survivors of modern slavery and human trafficking, first of all, ensure equity for survivors in different stages of recovery and reintegration journeys, and ensure the inclusiveness of those with additional needs, like women with childcare needs. Implement or enhance educational programs to address needs of both foreign nationals and British survivors of modern slavery. Dedicated days for to offer more guidance on how and allow students to familiarize themselves with the program. Offer a blended approach, which the Horizon Summer School has did, but more focused on the direct interaction learning, and to use the online elements as an additional method. And important is to ensure a move forward collaborative practice to assist students towards future educational opportunities or employment when possible. As well, deliver program in a relaxed time to allow them have more space for socializing as well. Maybe include some pastoral support as part of the program. And some recommendations for policymakers are to ensure access to education as part of the main support provided for survivors of modern slavery and human trafficking in their recovery and reintegration, provide guidance to education institutions and stakeholders for more accessible educational programs for survivors who can be in different stages of their recovery process, and which programs which overcomes the survivors' barriers in accessing current opportunities in the UK, as well ensuring multi-agency collaborative approach on supporting survivors and including educational institutions, because this would fill the gap of a fragmented service and consolidate a holistic support based on assessed needs for recovery and reintegration in the UK. So thank you so much. I won't stay long in the limitation. Most of them are being covered, but I will just mention that the findings produced are only relevant to this case study, and the findings cannot be generalized for all survivors of modern slavery, human trafficking in the UK. And the findings have derived from a short-term evaluation immediately after the summer school delivery. So maybe a longer-term evaluation would be important to see how the long-term impacts what the long-term impacts are in students, survivors of modern slavery, human trafficking. Thank you very much. So thank you, and I will pass the word to Vanna now.
Thank you, Sabiola. If you can stop sharing, can you manage to stop sharing? Yeah.
In a moment. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sabiola. Thank you. That was very informative. And I just put in the box, I'm aware that there is very little time left for the question and answer session. And but you can also you can all email your questions to me, and I will pass it on to whoever person you want to ask them for. Sorry, Tom, yes. There is a question?
Yeah, there certainly is. Thank you. I mean, it's been really fascinating and wonderful and inspiring to listen to, obviously, especially Anita, but I'm grateful for everyone who's put their back into this project and seen it through and delivered very much the vision that Carol and I had at the beginning and made a reality of it. So it's been deeply moving and deeply, deeply encouraging. The three questions that I have really are: one, what happens next in St Mary's? I assume we'll have to take the evaluation and in a way redesign. What would the course look like in the light of the feedback we're getting, and issues like whether we need something separate altogether with men and British survivors. We need now in a way to develop the concept, and I just wondered what the thinking is. That I think the notion that you need a longer term evaluation as well is very, very valuable. What actually a year from now will these survivors make it? Will it have made a difference in what happens, as I sincerely hope it has, in them getting jobs and living in this society? Secondly, obviously the absolutely critical issue of what do Karen and others think about the prospects for funding, and I don't know if Sarah's still on the line, but it seems to me there's almost a case for government funding for this if they're serious about the modern slavery issue. But what is the thinking on that, on the church, given this particular links, whether they can give any help or help in getting us in touch with other funders? And I know Co-op have shifted their focus a bit, so probably won't be able to stay in the game. But I wondered if a company like Co-op and HSBC could steer us towards other businesses that they know might be interested in this. So what is the future thinking on possible funding partners? So sorry, it's a long list of questions, and I'm sure Carol and others are already scratching their heads, but you know, I think all of us want to see this thing go on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Vanna, you could maybe stop spotlighting now. I don't think I want to be spotlighted, because there were quite a lot of questions there. And Tom, I really appreciate your input, particularly because you were right there at the beginning when we put this proposal together. And I know, having spoken to you recently, you know, we really are very keen to not only run this programme again, but to extend the options and extend the delivery to different groups of people. So one of the things that was raised by, was it Rebecca? Rebecca from Hestia, was about men and also British survivors, and a bid that I wrote with Julie Christie-Webb from Caritas Westminster and Karen Anstis from Bakita House. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, but the idea of that bid was to reproduce this programme, but also to have a strand tailored to the needs of British survivors, and also, of course, men. In the original plan, we did want to have a programme that would be 2.5 days women and 2.5 days men, but we just didn't have the resources. And in fact, the pandemic then threw everything up in the air, and we had to respond to that. But we're certainly not going to drop the ball. And I think one of the interesting things for me, and I'm not sure if it's come across here, was that the kind of bureaucracy that we had to negotiate within an educational institution. This is not just St. Mary's. I would imagine this is every educational institution. To get things up and running was, you know, quite tricky, but we did it, Vanna. You did a lot of it, Vanna, and we crossed those barriers. So we've got it all ready to go and in place. And I think we just need to kind of take our bid elsewhere. And I know Julie said earlier on at the beginning that she is looking for other places to take this bid forward. Tom, I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions. I don't know. I know some of them were directed at me, and perhaps somebody else might want to jump in.
May I say something about faith? The Ministry of Housing, Local Government and Communities have initiated a Faith New Deal pilot, which I think is probably partly their recognition that faith organisations did an awful lot during the pandemic. And I think this is about making it much more visible and much more explicit. And their intention with the Faith New Deal pilot is to bring together public sector, voluntary sector and the faith sector much more strongly. So they're in the process of developing a faith compact, which I think kind of opens the door to statutory sector funding, as Tom mentions, because if you don't have that, you pretty much, you're so dependent on charitable funding all the time that you can't sustain. It's really hard to sustain. So statutory funding becomes absolutely critical. So it may be that it's a blended model of income for that kind, the kind of project that we're talking about. But the Faith New Deal pilot is a kind of a promising direction of travel for the government at the moment. So I hope that's helpful. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, if I just want to say something in terms of funding. I attended a very interesting workshop by the City of Sanctuary regarding University of Sanctuary the other day, and they were talking in terms of the university. I'm speaking from a very ignorant point of view here, in a sense that I don't know how university, when they develop the program or where the funding comes from, but they were saying that one of the important aspects of developing University of Sanctuary was to the development team within the university allocating funding to that. So, and of course, then other things like involving alumni, taking them on board. So I don't know exactly whether when St. Mary talks about, or when St. Mary puts in place their development, St. Mary as an example, and other university, of course, when they put in place their development, they're talking about development, might include also funding, that can be allocated to that. I'm not, in mine is a question more than an answer, actually. Yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, Vanna. I'm not sure if Nikki is still on the call or if she had to go. I mean, maybe that is something, as you're saying, that we need to take up internally with the university as well. And I think, Nikki is there nodding, because I think what Julie said is really important, actually. And it kind of hits what you're talking about as well, in terms of looking at that funding, that there has to be some kind of base pot of money to build on, and then we can approach other people to kind of supplement that, because obviously this being a proof of concept model, the costs were, I mean, they weren't very high. In fact, our bid probably didn't cover all the things that we did in the end, but so it wouldn't be as high as that, but nevertheless, yeah, I mean, because of the pandemic, we didn't have the childcare that we'd originally planned for. There were lots of things that got cut because of that. But I think we could still run this course, and we could extend it, by the way. The two students on this call, very much so, would love to extend it so that it's longer than 5 weeks, so that it's maybe 8 weeks or something. We could respond to your feedback and extend it, probably at not too much extra cost. So I think it's been just such a fantastic experience. We certainly don't want it to be, I think you said, Tom, earlier on, something that's just a one-off, or maybe it was Alison, something that's a one-off and then that's it. We have to make this happen again.
Shall I add to that as well?
Yes.
Yes, certainly the funding for universities of sanctuary is something that the university is discussing, and it is something that it would be really useful to have a follow-up discussion about what sort of costs you're talking about. It is always, we are always competing with a whole raft of other priorities when we're looking at university funding. And it's really important to remember as well that the majority of our funding comes from student fee income. And so we're really mindful of what we're doing with that student fee income. But certainly I think that at St. Mary's, we've got a way to go in actually looking at harnessing the income from other streams. I think that we certainly can look at alumni, we can certainly look at collaborative partners in a much more thorough or far wide-reaching way than we currently do. And I think that's a discussion that I would really welcome being part of, because I think there definitely is scope which we should be exploring.
Thanks, Nikki. I mean, I'm aware that we have run over time. Wendy is leaving. I'm sure other people probably have to go. I'm happy to stay here for a couple of minutes. If anybody who hasn't spoken has any kind of final questions, please raise your hand, make it known. Wendy, goodbye to Wendy. Thanks very much for joining. Okay. I think, did we put email address in there if anybody has any questions and they would like to contact us? Hopefully Vanna will be with us until the end of November. And if anybody wants to email Vanna, please do. Email, keep in touch with us in the Bikita Centre. We'd love to hear your feedback about this event and any thoughts you have about the project going forward. And that includes the two students on the call. If we haven't covered anything or captured anything, please let us know. And I think we'll wrap up there. I mean, you asked me to wrap up with some closing remarks, but I think
I only have one more thing to say, and this is coming from Melanie. Actually, she reminded me about that, and is about answering about the question what we're going to be doing with the learnings recommendation. We are actually working on a plan a plan for future summer schools that we are going to circulate to other people, or at least advertise. So, we are very happy to include that in our succession plan, and see what we can see if people are interested in taking this up. Yeah.
Thanks, Vanna. Thank you. Really important point, because that was one of the things that we put in the bid originally, was that we would kind of develop this into a package that we could then offer to other organisations, and they could tweak that or amend that to suit their kind of service or their institution. So we will be working on that, and we will disseminate information about that through the usual kind of channels like the Human Trafficking Foundation and other networks that we're involved in. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for coming along today. It's been absolutely amazing to hear from you all, and wishing you all the best. And thanks especially to Anita and Claudetta for coming along today. It was lovely to see you. Thanks, Amelia.